Thank you so much for having me today. And I'll get into it without delaying time too much. So basically, I think Sri Lanka is in a quite unique position given the economic and the debt crisis that we have been experiencing and the so-called economic recovery that is just focused on fiscal targets. So uh, I'd like to just add a little bit onto what Farida said about the carbon emissions and these net zero targets as well, because we've been focused or we've been framing the issue of climate just around carbon emissions. But now we also hear talks about triple planetary crisis, right? Because this is not only an issue about carbon, but this is also an issue about biodiversity loss. And on the other hand, we see pollution, plastic pollution linked to fossil fuels and the other types of emissions as well. So I think, and also the forever chemicals that is in our food, our air, our blood, everywhere, right? So this existing framing and the solutions that it has been bringing, and I think Sri Lanka is put in quite a position where we are unable to negotiate in terms of what really works for us, but we have to just take whatever is given to us because we're in a debt crisis, we're in an economic crisis, and we're going through this IMF conditions, which has imposed austerity on us. And so this shows quite a stark reality on what is shown on policy in terms of macroeconomics or national level targets on all the policy decisions and the lived realities of the people on the ground. And Sri Lanka recently published the National Climate Finance Strategy, the roadmap from 2025 to 2030. So this speaks a lot about private financing and private-public partnership, and it speaks about valuations of ecosystem services. So basically commodification of nature and putting a value on natural environment and the biodiversity as well. So Sri Lanka, as a member of BIMSTEC and as we adopted the charter in 2022, I believe we do have an opportunity to present what works for us, because I believe it just like, we think that we do not have any bargaining power because we are in a crisis. I believe it actually gives us a bargaining power, because we can show that everything else that, that tried to work didn't work. So what could work? And so with the economic crisis, we are being told that Sri Lanka is on the path to recovery and our macroeconomic is doing better. But at the same time, we have a quarter of the population in below poverty lines, and the poverty is increasing, and over 1 million families had to disconnect electricity because IMF imposed, IMF is pushing for, there's a push for privatization of electricity, and also IMF conditions suggested that we had to increase our electricity rates as well. So this means people are unable to access basic needs as days go by. And the other issue is that we've been continuing to prioritize export-led agriculture as opposed to people's needs. So this is not new, and I think this is also not new to a lot of other countries in the region and the other BIMSTEC countries as well. Basically, our economic policy is still structured exactly as when we were under the British colonial rule. It's using our natural resources and our labor to serve the global market, to serve people elsewhere, to serve countries elsewhere, while our people, our laborers are getting paid minimum wage, and while our natural resources are being exploited. And I think when we talk about how we can bring in feminist values into BIMSTEC agreements and how we can actually strengthen feminist values within that, it's also important to understand some of the major setbacks in the neoliberal economics, which is completely ignoring the environmental costs or putting the brunt of the environmental harm on the societies or on the people. And while we are receiving all of this climate financing, through the private sector, this ignores the previous harm that is being done. So now we are getting money to restore our environments that has been previously damaged, but nobody paid for the damages that was caused. The people paid. People paid with their health, their lives, and the environment paid as well. So I think in terms of finances, we need to really understand, we need to really not take everything that is given to us, but also critically analyze that. And I don't see this happening within the Sri Lankan government right now, though we have a more progressive government, at least on paper, but they are unfortunately going down the same road that was laid by the previous regimes and by the IMF. So
can you start to close your arguments? Can you start to?
Sorry.
Hello. Can you start to conclude? Can you start?
Yes. Yes. Sure. And I think what I would like to share is how we can change, what BIMSTEC could actually become if it is rooted in feminist principles. So instead of GDP growth, if we can collectively look at how we can support each other, and if we can measure our success through the well-being of the people. And like we were speaking earlier, there are renewable projects even in Sri Lanka that are harming ecosystems, that are harming people's lives. So this is not the way to go, and this is not supporting the countries, and this is not supporting climate adaptations of the country as well. So, and to specifically what we can do is looking at how we can reduce carbon emissions through the trades. So rather than spending on longer and carbon extensive trade, we should be looking at empowering local communities and and improving more collaboration over competition among the groups. And if we can, and also tax carbon intensive productions and distribution, and reward near sourcing circular reuse, and also encouraging women's agroecological networks that link to local producers directly with the consumers. And democratize financing and trade governance through replacing the elite export credit systems and supporting community trade funds, which are managed by the local communities and women's groups. And if we can push for gender balanced trade negotiations, and if we can make sure that women are at the center of energy decision making, especially because these are areas that are highly dominated by men, and redirect climate finances towards grassroots cooperatives, especially women's cooperatives and community groups. And also I think it's important to understand both the environmental damage and also the discrimination for women happens through the very same system, through patriarchal and neoliberal systems. So providing solutions, and also I believe we actually have two fights. One is fighting the old system, and the second one is building the new. But unfortunately, we are at a place where we'll have to do both at the same time. So I think BIMSTEC actually could provide a great platform to do this if we pull our energies together, and if we can really push our governments to come into regional agreements and dialogues that puts women, feminist values at core. Thank you so much.